1982, a little-known Japanese company named Nintendo and their first research and development team, titled R&D1, developed a wonderful little arcade platformer called Popeye, which was based on the comic strip and the characters from that comic strip by the same name. Now, don't let the graphical limitations of the Atari 2600 fool you into thinking this is a bad game. It certainly is not. It plays very true to the arcade game, which was a very unique thing for the Atari arcade ports. They generally sucked dick and resembled nothing close to the arcade version. This is a very close representation of the arcade game. Now, without getting into the whole Popeye comic strip backstory, let me try and explain what's going on here. You're controlling Popeye, that kind of peachy kind of colored blobby guy running around, and you are trying to catch hearts from Olive Oil, who's that red blobby, blocky kind of thing at the top of the screen. The hearts are those reddish-colored diamond shapes falling down. The antagonist of the game is Bluto or Brutus. I'm not sure which it is. I want to say it's Bluto, but I could be wrong. It could be Brutus. Anyhow, he's that greenish, flashy-colored, fat, blobby kind of character that's chasing you around. He throws beer bottles at you. If the beer bottles hit you, they kill you. But you can turn around and punch them. And use the one button on the Atari controller for punching. Now you can pick up a can of spinach, which is that it's represented by a little green block, and it kind of moves around the screen, and it sits on the steps, and it'll move from level to level. And you can pick it up by punching it, and that'll make you turn red, and you're able to actually punch Brutus, or Bluto, or whatever the hell his name is, to buy yourself a little bit of time to collect all the hearts, or diamonds, or whatever they are. Now, I mentioned earlier that Popeye in the arcade was a pretty big hit. It was a pretty fun game to play. The graphics were wonderful for 1982 in the arcade. Nintendo really outdid itself, and they set the bar pretty high. And like I said, many arcade titles didn't translate so well on the Atari 2600. But Popeye, on the other hand, did translate very well on the Atari 2600. Aside from the horrible blobby, blocky graphics. All the elements of gameplay are there. Virtually unchanged. There's a little bit of change here and there. The boards aren't exactly replicas of the arcade version. But the arcade version did have 3 different boards, and there are 3 different boards on the Atari version, which was, like, highly unusual. And the other thing the Atari 2600 version did was kept the same music from the arcade, which was also, like, highly unusual. Now, you're looking at Stage 2 on the Atari 2600 version of Popeye, and it's no bad technical thing going on here. The screen really is that dark, and it's that hard to make out the platforms you're supposed to be walking on and whatnot. They chose a black background with dark brown as the color of the platform, and the platforms are very thin. It's virtually impossible to see what's going on. It's a mess. But it's what you can make out is pretty close to the arcade version of the same stage. So Popeye is probably the single most greatest arcade port on the Atari 2600. It very much represents graphically, musically, and gameplay-wise the arcade version. And it doesn't get much better than that. And it even has all the stages the arcade version has. That's like unprecedented for the Atari. I'm Dommy from Classic Games Revisited. Until next time.